of ways that you can regulate conflicts. You can sit down and talk, or you can shoot. And the talking business is very complicated, and the illegals. Even though they do it, and it has consequences when they do it. Okay. There is, maybe I should try to do the Mauricio trick again. There's a list, there's a pretty good list of countries by intentional homicide rate that is, they don't have the latest figures for homicides that are available for each country because they don't want to disturb the homogeneity of how they get these numbers. But it's a quite serious methodology that is behind these statistics of the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime. They are biased, and there's a lot of things to say about the whole office, United Nations Office of Drug and Crime. But this homicide report is methodologically much more solid than most other surveys, homicide monitors, etc. So it doesn't give you the exact numbers who at this very moment is the country with the highest homicide rate. It all relates to something like 2015 or 2000. But it gives you quite a good idea of how things are being distributed. Now you can look here. You go from Andorra. They don't have a homicide per year. So they have a 0.00 thing, and they are in Europe. And then you can take, let's say, the first 20 countries with the lowest homicide rate. Number 2 is San Marino. Number 3 is Liechtenstein, where you cannot take them so seriously because they hardly have any inhabitants. And where there are no people, there is very little killing. Macau is already quite interesting. Singapore, Hong Kong. Japan is very interesting, a large country with hundreds of millions of inhabitants. And they have a homicide rate of 0.31. Then you have Indonesia, another large country. They have had their own massacres in the 1960s, but now they have a homicide rate that is minimal. Austria also, only half a person is killed in Austria per year per 100,000 inhabitants. So you have to wait 2 years to have one person per 100,000 inhabitants killed. Norway, also 0.56. Netherlands, 0.61. Ireland, 0.64. Spain, 0.66. Switzerland, well, Switzerland is not in the 20 countries with the lowest homicide rate, but they're number 21, and they have 0.69. So it seems some Asian countries, but also some European countries, they are quite free from homicides. And when we look at just regions, we find the regions here. The Americas. See, Europe has these point things 0.7, 0.8, 1. Moldova has 3, Belarus, Ukraine has 4, Russia has 11. So they spoil the party in Europe, but the more Western you get in Europe, the better things are. And you have a different world there. You have people sitting in the street having coffee. Nobody talks about security because there is a 0.4, 0.5 sort of rate of homicides. With robbery, it's similar. You will not be thinking about robbery. You sit in Eimsbüttel and everybody sits around and nobody talks about security. It's different from São Paulo. So this is not a bad list if you want to have an overview of how things are. And in the Caribbean, look here, they have some places with 2.7, but then most of the countries in the Caribbean, they have something like 6, 7, 8 above world average, and they climb quite far above world average, 10, 11, 14, 25, 29, 30, 33. Now these are preoccupying levels of violence. And then we have a look at well, we can have a look at all these places, but we will not. Just wanted to call attention to the fact that this is not a bad list in the Wikipedia, and you can play around with it and look at different aspects. Let's have just one small look at the countries with the highest rate. Look here, if we take as number 1 the country with the highest rate, we have places like El Salvador, Honduras, Venezuela, United States Virgin Islands, honeymoon destination with 52. That's 100 times more than in some of the Western European countries. Jamaica, Belize, St. Kitts and Nevis, Trinidad and Tobago, Bahamas, all the most beautiful places in the world. And then Brazil, number 14, 26. It has risen to 29 last year. So Brazil has climbed up a little bit in this list. Getting close to the Bahamas and to Trinidad and Tobago. In all these countries, they don't usually have these high rates of homicides. They just have them since the vacuum cleaner is drawing all the cocaine through, and that destroys the countries and the societies and the families. Okay. All right, let's get on. Yeah, there's an interesting duplicity of events. I arrive in Brazil, and on the way to Brazil, I bought The Economist, and I have to do something on the plane and waiting for connections, etc. And what do I see there? A beautiful article about the homicide question in Latin America. Not bad, few pages, but they have a gift of condensing information very nicely. And then I bought one newspaper, no sábado, a Folha de São Paulo, sem saber. E, gente. E agora, Brasil, segurança pública. Meia dúzia de artigos sobre homicídio, criminalidade, polícia, caveirão, Boa foto do caveirão. Em Liechtenstein, na Suíça, nós não temos essas coisas. Genebra, você procura caveirão brasileiro, não. A polícia está subequipada. Justiça criminal, bem interessante. Uma coisa que eu achei interessante, até coloquei no último minuto nessa Wikipedia. Olha só, o Código de Processo Penal fixa prazo de até 316 dias para o processamento de um caso de homicídio, mas, fora do papel, ele demora 8 anos e 6 meses, na média. Na média? Na média? É muito tempo. Só na média. Pode ser mais. Com um bom advogado. Muito mais. Então, sistema prisional. Olha, achei interessante. Sobretudo, parece que tem uma jornalista, a Fernanda Mena, que escreveu a maioria desses artigos que me impressionou. Boa pesquisa, bom trabalho, boas fotos, arrastão, caveirão, prisão. Muito interessante. Olha, vou contar para vocês, assim vocês não precisam ver, se bem que tem na internet ainda essa coisa, se não tem na banca, tem na internet, mas vou falar para você tudo grátis o que a Fernanda Mena escreveu e o que o Economist escreveu. Rapidinho. Isso é do Economist. América Latina, 8% da população do mundo, mas 38% de homicídios. Na região inteira da América Latina, no ano passado, foram 140 mil vítimas de homicídio. Mais do que anualmente nas guerras nos últimos tempos. Claro que a Segunda Guerra Mundial era diferente, mas desde então o homicídio é mais perigoso do que a guerra. Eles, lá no Economist, eles pensam que a urbanização é um fator importante na subida dos homicídios, mas a urbanização no sul do continente latino-americano, Argentina, etc., foi maior do que a urbanização na parte norte, e na parte norte da América Latina a taxa de homicídios despencou muito mais dramaticamente do que no sul. Por quê? Drogas. Também é muito pequeno lá. Não pode visitar. Tudo se concentra. Se o modelo dos países mais moderados, que conseguem controlar a taxa de homicídios, espalha para os países vizinhos até o ano 2030, poderia se salvar mais de 2,5 milhões de vidas. Se os países sem controle espalham o modelo deles, então vai ser diferente. Depende muito de que tipo de política e desenvolvimento social e na política criminal e nas prisões etc. A gente vai ter na América Latina daqui adiante. The Economist diz que em alguns lugares só tem um julgamento de homicídio por cada 20 casos investigados pela polícia. Acho que eles fazem referência ao Brasil. Another thing that is empirically shown, brutal government crackdowns often make things worse. Grossly overpopulated prisons have become crime factories rather than rehabilitation centers. Can we say that? Yeah. Well, there's an instituto, the Igarapé Institute, no Rio de Janeiro. They say approximately 80% of homicides in large and medium-sized Latin American cities occur on just 2% of the streets. Now this could be an interesting start. They say we can define the streets where the homicides occur, and those are only 2% of the streets in these cities. And if we can deploy personnel there, and if we can analyze the situation there, and if we can try to use intelligence also in dealing with these 2% streets, we might have a start of controlling them and getting the rates down. Latin American governments spend an average of 5% of their budgets on internal security, twice as much as developed countries. A recent study of the Inter-American Development Bank estimates the direct costs of violent crime in the region at $236 billion a year. That's quite a lot of money, and it hampers development. If one had things under control, there would be a lot of resources free for development. It seems to be that El Salvador is an interesting case in point. In 2004, they put soldiers on the streets and threw thousands of gang members into prison to clamp down on crime. What was the consequence of putting thousands of gang members in prison? A rise in homicides. How come? Difficult to understand. Then, in 2012, they had a different strategy, a peace between the big three gangs, and they gave imprisoned leaders luxuries like flat-screen televisions and fried chicken if they would tell their people in their gangs to stop killing. Then the murder rate went down by 50% overnight because of flat-screen television, chicken for the bosses. Yeah, but then this peace treaty between the government and the gangs and the bosses and the chicken, that somehow crumbled, and then the whole thing started over again. Then in 2015, they tried the same method from 2004, and this time with even more brutality. Now, they said, we want to be completely merciless. And that works also. Top security prisons. Our first murders rocketed to 104 per 100,000 people. Then the number dropped back by 40% over the next 2 years, which they explain with their extraordinary measures in the prisons. For 2 years, tens of thousands of gang members have seen no relatives, no doctors, and no daylight. At the same time, the numbers of the public shot by police have gone up 15 times, sparking an international outcry. The treatment that the state provides should not be as bad as the sickness itself, said the United Nations Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial execution. So what you can do is you just exterminate a large part of the population, and that might have some effect on crime. It's not sure, but it might get crime down for a time, but it could any time go up again. So, but the example of El Salvador with these different policies followed, sometimes you crack down and crime goes up, sometimes you crack down, crime goes down, sometimes you broker a peace, etc. So that would be worth a detailed study, and maybe there are. It seems there are detailed studies, but that could be a good case for criminologists to sort of evaluate more deeply. And then there is this researcher in Rio, Ignacio Cano, who has done research on the militias, and he has now also done research on homicide reduction programs. He looked at 93 homicide reduction programs in Latin America, and it's not quite clear what was found out. One thing that he found out for sure was they are not being evaluated in a good fashion, and so one does not really know what is causal, what is not causal. Okay, let's go to Fernanda Mena and her colleagues at the Folia. What did I learn there in this article? Well, she says Brazil has a murder rate now of 29.7, getting very close to 30. That is about 3 times the rate that is considered acceptable. That I found interesting. Why is 10 acceptable? Coming from Western Europe, you know, we would say, well, 1.0 is acceptable, 2.0 is acceptable, 3 we already think, are we in Russia? So why is 10 acceptable? Now 10 is acceptable, I think, because 8, 9, 10 is what we see in the United States. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's because that journal is very political, biased,
Yeah.
and that's actually our rate in São Paulo right now. So to make our state look good, you say that up until 10 it's okay.
Yeah.
And that's what we have here in São Paulo.
Yeah, right, São Paulo.
Yes.
Yeah, right. São Paulo is acceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we are proud of the public security in the state.
Yeah.
But
We
that's
still
not
have
Brazil.
coming elections.
So the elections
Yeah.
are coming. That's why there's saying 10.
Yeah.
and
So I
so-
stumbled over this acceptable. Now I understand.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
We are here, and what we have here is
It's
acceptable.
okay. Yeah.
It's okay. We don't say it's great, but it's
It's
acceptable.
better than the rest of
Yes.
the country.
It's much better than Sergipe.
Yeah,
Of course.
Yeah. It's always been better than Sergipe.
It's about make Brazil São Paulo again.
Of course.
Make America great.
That's it.
Yeah, yeah, yes, yes, right, right. Yeah, with 61,284 deaths in the last year, that of course is in absolute numbers, that is a record for Latin America, because Brazil is the largest country. And then with a considerable rate that is higher than acceptable, we have 60,000, 61,000 deaths. And that has been going up quite steeply over the last years. And that's a reason for concern. Yeah, 100 inquéritos policiais de homicídio geram 34 denúncias por parte do Ministério Público e só 5 chegam ao julgamento. Now, considering that even in the United States, with all their technicalities, the rate of wrongful convictions is quite high, even in murder cases. So high that in the state of Ohio, they, at a certain given time in the 1990s, they had to transform all capital punishments in that state into life sentences because there was such a high rate of proven, DNA-proven wrongful convictions. In Germany, there are judges who say that in Germany, maybe 1/4 of all convictions are wrong.
1/4.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, people in Russia say the justice system there is like a lottery. No. So you get from, I don't know about Brazil, but now of these 5 convictions, maybe 1 or 2 might be wrongful ones. But there are many convictions that don't happen, that would be not wrongful ones. So this is quite an evaluation of a justice system. And I don't know when a justice system becomes acceptable. I don't think the German system is acceptable. But I have not seen very many acceptable systems in my life. But then, yeah, this would be a fertile campo de pesquisa. When is the justice system acceptable? Why not have, I mean, when we go to the supermercado and we buy milk, we have a linha de não sei o quê para o consumidor. You get a wrong milk, you said, oh, it smells bad, then you liga número da proteção do consumidor e eles vão fazer alguma coisa. But when you get a wrongful conviction, you don't have this fucking number. And that's pretty bad. The justice system is so in all over the world. The criminal justice system delivers services to the society, to the victims, to the witnesses, to the accused. It's also a service to the accused because you have your constitutional rights. So it's a service. But nobody notices in the system that it is a service. If everybody understood that it is a service, you would have that fucking telephone number. It's just aloof. It's like in the Middle Ages when one was not thinking it's a service, but it's something you do from above to below, and everybody shuts up. You know, and if you don't shut up, you shut up. Huh? The way we organize our criminal justice system is from authoritarian times, when people were subjugated to the absolute state authority, and we have some bourgeois elements in it, but we don't really see them blossom. So why not reorganize the whole criminal justice system to the bones, completely, and work on the notion of justice. People don't even think of justice anymore. They think of, yeah, we have a case, yeah, with now tá arquivado, tudo bem. Vamos arquivar outro, etc. Ou vamos julgar, vamos botar na prisão, mas também, será que esse caso é culpado? Esse cara, quem sabe? Muitas vezes não. Tudo bem. Olha, now, when I was reading Fernando Mena's pieces, and of her collaborators, and I was looking at these homicide rates, I was recalling a book that is interesting from the year 2009, Randolph Roth, American Homicide. He goes from the 17th century to the 20th century, and he looks at homicide rates, and he shows how the homicide rates in the United States in colonial times in early independence time and in modern times, they were going like crazy, like a roller coaster. And he looks at why. Why were they so high in the 17th century? Why were they getting lower? Why then higher again? And he has quite an interesting explanation. And somehow, I think, if Randolph Roth is right for the United States with his factors that he says are responsible for higher or lower homicide rates, if he is right, then that could be a good lead if one wants to explore why do we have these high homicide rates in Latin America and in Brazil. Now, the drug question is certainly one answer, but there is more to it, and that what is more to it may have to do with the drug question. Again, we will see. Now, Randolph Roth says, to make it short, he speaks of correlations, increases in the homicide rate. Every time he saw a big increase in homicide rates, he saw the following, I think it was 4 factors, but I will read them to you and we can count all together. A loss of government legitimacy, a loss of fellow feeling among members of society caused by racial, religious, or political antagonism, and a loss of faith in the social hierarchy. 3. Let's see. Let's count again. Political instability, loss of government legitimacy, loss of fellow feeling among members of society, and a loss of faith in the social hierarchy. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It would be interesting to sort of operationalize and apply to these different countries and look, what does it mean? What does it mean, political instability? Do we have indicators, etc.? What does it mean, loss of government legitimacy? And what does it mean, loss of fellow feeling among members of society? Now, fellow feeling among members of society, I associate with cleavages in society. For instance, when groups in society live their own lives and they think they are the society. In the United States, you could say, maybe when you look at police killings of young black, unarmed people, that the fellow feeling between the white middle class and the young poor blacks and the slum, they don't really think that they are members of the same society. They don't feel. When you ask them, they would maybe say, yeah, we're all members of the same society. But the feeling is not like that. When you see that a young black guy is being shot by the police, you say, yeah, wrong time, wrong place. You don't. It's different when you see a 19-year-old student, Harvard student, being shot. That's different. So maybe in some societies there are cleavages between groups in society, like race cleavages, class cleavages, I don't know what cleavages, religious cleavages. In Northern Ireland you have the Protestants and the Catholics, and you had terrible violence and hatred. They were all living in one society, but there was much hatred between the two groups. So there was certainly not a fellow feeling between the Catholics and the Protestants. All Christians, thou shalt not kill and everything. No matarás, but they hated each other. It doesn't say don't hate each other. Or does it? No, it says love your neighbor, etc., etc. And they certainly did that. Yeah. It's time for an interval.